Come and shoot the breeze with myself and guests as we deep dive into some topics that may just pin your eyelids right back. So, welcome everyone to another series of Shoot the Breeze with myself, Mandy Horton. And if you feel drawn to, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and spread these conversations throughout the globe. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. And today I'm speaking with a beautiful, gorgeous woman from the UK, Pauline Townsend. Welcome, Pauline.
Hello. 25 years in New Zealand first.
Yes, true. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Pauline works in a homeless or for a homeless charity in the UK and works with multiple complex disadvantaged people. So we've got all new language here, and it is, as we were saying about the identity thing too, in a conversation I was having with somebody else the other day, there's so many new labels or language now that we've got to get our head and tongue around. So I'm interested for you to just go over, Pauline, what's happening in the UK, what the impact is of your work and what you're doing.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say these are my opinions, not where I work. So
Yeah.
multiple complex disadvantage is working with people on usually homelessness, drug or alcohol misuse, mental health illness, domestic violence, and amongst that always is trauma, whether it be from childhood, young person, or adult. There's always trauma. And so I work with the complex need people across a wide variety. So, for example, I had a gentleman who really struggled with lockdown, got into drinking heavily. His wife got into drinking heavily. That knock-on effect was the relationship broke. He then started having seizures, lost his job, became homeless, had an addiction, got into drugs, was 6'6" and weighing 8 stone, and wasn't going to make it. This was all within 3 years of lockdown. So the 3 years. So what happens is you need to go and find the core of what is doing it. And for him, actually, it was the food. Funnily enough, it wasn't the alcohol or the drugs, it was food.
Right.
And work on that, and then heal, bringing in all different services. So my role is to bring in services to support. That might be mental health support, might be drug and alcohol misuse support, domestic violence support, all different things. That's my role. Now, amongst that, of course, it often means that you have to advocate for your client. So one of the biggest things I've noticed here is people are not listening.
Right.
People are not listening. So a client will say, I'm feeling this. And some professional will say, no, you're not, you're feeling this, for example. Not as simple as that, but yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's the biggest thing. And within our charity and within our group, we will say to everybody, the biggest disease across the UK is hopelessness. And it's spreading.
Yeah, for sure. I do see it here in New Zealand. Obviously, there is that pocket of it, but I'm also seeing such a huge amount of people now coming out of that as well. and feeling like they have life in hand again, and they can actually start planning ahead and getting their lives back in order. In the hopelessness, that is that through the COVID era, do you think that was sort of brought upon by that, or is there more to it than that, do you think?
I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is coming out of it. But what's happening is, because a lot of people did not cope with being locked down, especially men. So there's been a huge trend now of today, men having mental health breakdowns
Right.
because they go, "Are you okay? I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay." Crash. Whereas, and this is a general, whereas women, "Are you okay? I'm okay. No, I'm not."
Yeah.
So, it's a shorter timeline before women will say, "No, I'm not okay." Men will keep the backbone, keep the chin up, and then
Yes.
crash.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think also, because I sort of pondered on that, and I sort of felt women are so used to being at home with the children. That's sort of been the role, whether they're working woman or not, they come home and they still take over the role of mum and the kids and, all of that in the house. And I think men have always had that, not so much, I can't say it's so much freedom, but they've always had that outside the home life,
It's like
and
they
so,
didn't have an anchor, a full anchor like a woman does.
yes, and so the being then locked down and locked in a space that they actually could not get out and couldn't go out to their daily job and do the thing outside the house as they would usually every day. I think that has had an impact, I
It
would say.
it has had a massive impact.
Yeah,
Probably, and again, I'm generalizing, but some of the words that have come out with clients is suddenly feeling vulnerable. So for
right.
men, they had not felt vulnerable. They had not had their freedom taken away. They've not suddenly had to change route of what they were doing. And this isn't against men, actually. This is for them. But they haven't had to flow and move. So like, as women, if we have children, we're working, then we're pregnant, then we have babies, then we go back to work. Whereas a man doesn't, he goes
Have
to
that
work.
transition.
Yeah.
No.
So there's no movement and flow. And these are the words of the men, not my words, is
Yeah,
I haven't had to change so quickly. I haven't had to do this. And I
yeah,
feel vulnerable. I had my
right.
life taken away. Whereas women, our life gets taken, put back, taken, put back. That
It does. Yeah. That's big. That's actually really big. And like in the sense of if we want to talk about or mention even just this new world we're moving into, because the COVID era really took that, it was the stop, look and listen. Have a look,
was
see what is your life? Is this really what you want to go back to when you get out of this lockdown? Is that the lifestyle you still want to live? And I know for many, it changed them. Everyone I think was changed on some level. And vulnerability is where we need to go to be able to come into our own and
yeah.
really truly soften. And the men, particularly, probably, I don't know, but that's my thinking. And the overall view is that it's a necessary part to their breakdown as such to create that new out of the old identity.
The softer side has come out
Yes.
a lot
Yeah.
more. And acceptance is another word I would
Yeah.
use around this whole journey for the males, is acceptance of change. And that hasn't had to happen before, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? But that would create like no, like even myself, I find it difficult sometimes to be able to be vulnerable, to come into vulnerability. So that would be a very difficult thing for the males. And when you're seeing it on a sort of almost like a wave, you know, global wave maybe, or national, a trend within your country in a sense, that would be big.
I think a lot of men have never truly experienced fear, or women, a lot of women. And that fear that was from being locked down to the fear of not knowing if life was ever going to be the same, that's had a massive knock-on effect as well.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that has pushed through to people losing their jobs, becoming homeless. And because of the internet and TV and all of that, it's very clear now, whereas things like homelessness were kept under the rug. You know,
Right, yeah.
and now it's not. It's very, very open, and it's talked about a lot more now. The fact that the way a homeless person was treated, not just here, but anywhere in the world,
Mm,
prior to this was completely different to now. It's like
yes, yes.
not acceptable, but it's like these things happen in life. There's been more acceptance from general population that actually you can lose everything in a day or a week, you know, or
That's right. Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think because, like, I'm seeing this here in New Zealand, is that there's a huge growth in the sense of people not coping, not being able to feed their families, needing those support systems where, they're going to food banks more. Obviously, WINS, the work and income. It's like there is definitely a huge movement in that. And the resources are stretched to their limit, like, actually. So it's having to be addressed, really. It's having to
yeah.
be now. Whereas before it
So
was like, well, we could just leave it over there for now and carry on,
yeah.
but not anymore.
So in my role, this was created by the Department of Levelling Up, which is not a political, it's a government department.
Yeah,
And that is about everything we do gets fed back
yeah,
so that they can see or put together where the gaps are. Because in the words of who I work for, things have to change. There has to be system change. We cannot carry on this path, which is why I joined this in the first place,
right,
because it is
yeah,
about change. And, that can be as simple as there aren't enough dentists, or it could be that when somebody leaves a mental health service, they go back in the community, the services haven't been talking to each other, so they'd fall through the gaps. This is all stuff that's being fed back for system change. And I find it really wonderful that a government department, and it doesn't matter who's in government, is actually saying we can't carry on like this. You know,
right,
the NHS here is stretched beyond, and it's a fabulous service. There's not enough, like all around the world, nurses
yeah,
or doctors, and mental health services is stretched beyond anything they've ever known
yeah,
because of the trend of what's happening. And so this department was set up, and like in New Zealand, lottery money's gone to it as well, because it all needs to be recorded and taken back. And then there'll be a summit, I think it's September, where they'll really look at what's been going on, so these changes can have an effect on moving forward,
mm.
which is really important.
It is very important. And it had to almost crash and burn for it to actually come back up, like, the growth back into the new. It is a good thing, but it is definitely stretched, like, everywhere. I'm seeing it, I feel, globally, as we
Yeah.
probably all know that, from that lovely COVID era. Ugh. And is there a
Yeah.
sort of resurgence of that over there, Pauline? You're noticing more masks and um
No, that the media will pick the odd person. And to be fair, I mean, people will put a mask on to go on the underground in London. Well, it's probably a sensible thing to do with coughs and colds and flu anyway, because you're packed like
yeah.
sardines. But generally, no. They tried to bring about the word again, and
Hmm.
everybody laughed.
Yeah.
They laughed here. They
Yeah.
just completely ignored it, completely.
That's
And
what's happening here. It's great.
yeah, there's no surgeons. But as I say, especially elderly people, they will put a mask on if
Mm.
they've got a cold or something like that, which is fair. And on
Yes.
intensive care wards in the hospital, you have to wear a mask, but that would have been sensible anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about lockdown or COVID or anything.
No.
It's sensible,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't stop everything being transmitted, but it's a little precaution that helps. So
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
there's no trend on that.
Cool. That's
He
great to
wouldn't,
hear.
he wouldn't get away with it. He wouldn't get
No.
away with it. No.
It's great, eh? That's what I'm so seeing that too here, and everyone just laughing, going, "Oh, what another variant? Oh, yeah, sure."
Yeah.
You know, it's just
We
a
fell for it once, it won't
oh,
happen again.
no, exactly that. I do see people still in fear though. I have clients that come in who are very fearful of virus. Um, so there's that sort of part to it as well. Very, like afraid that they're going to get something that's going to, yeah, hinder their health and all of that. But
I think because of where I work, I don't see that, because
mm,
people on the streets or people in temporary housing that we've just got off the streets and things, actually that's the least of their worries. They want a
totally,
bed and they want food. And so I don't tend to see that side of things so much.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
definitely not in the hospitals, you know.
yeah,
Um, the alcohol misuse and the drug misuse on the streets is purely because people can't cope. And
yeah,
that's purely all it is, you know.
yeah,
You start giving them a warm bed and food and things. There is the odd ones, but as a general rule, you know,
yeah,
and get their life back on track. And so you're working in a different area of what's important,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
not masks and things like that. That's a low priority.
totally. Yeah, I get that. So, Pauline, what's some examples of the situations that people have been in without giving, any personal detail, but what's some of the things that have sort of stuck in for you that have been a bit of an eye opener, in regards to people's situations?
You're completely right. It's fear-based. All of it is fear-based.
Yeah.
One of the things that have come out of it is a lot of women had a lot of abuse during lockdown, and now they've moved out of it. They're not putting up with that anymore, whereas they would have put up with it for years and years. And so now there's a definite breakthrough of no,
No
because
more.
actually they found there are services there, they can get away. And you know, and yeah, it's quite massive, because there's people moving all around the country getting them out of areas, you know, which we're also involved with, you know. So it's like people are not going to put up with the government telling them rubbish. Women are not, or men in a violent relationship are not going to put up with that either. And so there's a big trend of movement. People are moving, changing jobs, moving house, moving, not, I don't mean selling houses, I mean actually moving areas for safety.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
So
quite interesting.
yeah, so a lot of courage and respect to actually wanting to better their lives and making that huge change and transition through those choices. That's really cool.
I think that, and also it was a wake-up call for many people who were living in a bad situation, maybe alcohol dependent or in a violent relationship or something, suddenly going, well, actually, we only get one kick at this, and no, I don't want this anymore,
Yeah.
and seeking help. And so how I end up working with people, they get nominated. People will say, I need help. And it could come from the hospital, it could come from the GP, could come from anywhere. And they get nominated to get that support into housing, into mental health support, etc. But one of the things that the team I'm in and my manager fight against is we've always done it this way. And you know, Mandy, you've known me long enough to know that's my pet hate. And so there's a lot of people in health who've always done it that way.
Yeah.
And well,
That way doesn't always work.
it's not working now. So
No.
there's a lot of autism spectrum coming out. And I was on a course the other day and something, you know, so I have a young lady who'd been saying to the mental health team, I haven't eaten for 28 days, haven't eaten for 28 days. And they were panicking and I wasn't panicking. I couldn't understand why. well, one, she didn't look like she hadn't eaten for 28
I was
days.
just going to say,
You know, and during the professionals meeting with the specialist in autism, I said this, and it turned out that what she meant was she hadn't eaten a hot meal for 28 days. She'd snacked. And so one
right.
of the big changes is language, like you say, language for how we use it, but also language how we've got to remember that just because someone says I haven't eaten for 28 days doesn't mean I haven't eaten for 28 days. It means I've probably been snacking on chocolate bars and drinking milkshakes. It doesn't
Yes.
say. And I think that is been a big lesson to realize what someone says isn't what we think it is.
Yes. Yeah. It's that listening thing. But also,
Again,
and also too, Pauline, one of the things that you are very good at is your intuition. You're a very intuitive person. You feel things, an empath, huge empath. So you would have felt into what she was saying anyway and felt it in that way. Whereas those who are in those sort of industries, say, in those arenas, tend to be so robotic, like we do it this way. and they
clinical.
and it's so clinical. And so therefore there's not that, you know, that intimacy that comes in when you actually listen to your own intuition and respect to them energetically. So yeah, somebody like you in that industry is going to be very valuable, I think.
Oh,
Definitely.
thank you. But
Mm,
also we are trained to ask our clients how they feel. You know, it's no good meeting somebody who's alcohol dependent saying, right, you're going to give up alcohol.
yeah.
It's got to be, if they want to carry on drinking, then how can we manage it the best for them? Or if they don't want to get help, mental health, how can we manage it? So it's about their journey. Everything we do is about their journey,
Yeah.
not about what we think their journey should be. And
Yes.
that's massive.
Totally
That's
it. And
massive. And it's upset a lot of health professionals, because being led by my manager, who's a mental health specialist, but seeing the effects of telling people what's wrong with them
yeah.
without asking them what's wrong with them has been huge. And so, yeah, and I think that's the biggest learning. I could reel off lots of stories, you know. If you want me to, I could just pick one. But I think the biggest thing is the whole listening thing and the change of language, and
Yeah.
not just how they want us to do it, the language. And young people, I've got a 17-year-old lad who's been in care since he was 8 months old, and never been in the same foster home his whole life. And his language is so different to anything. I had to learn a whole new language. And it's not just, you know, yo bro or anything like that. It's not the
Yeah.
attitude. It's actually the words are different. At 18, the words are different.
Right. Yeah. I can understand that. It's massive, eh? And excuse me. What do you see? Like what is the future, if you get me? What is it sort of showing you in the sense of what's happening right now? Where do you feel this is all going? Like what's the bigger picture that they're aiming for? Obviously everyone under some sort of a well umbrella, you know. What am I trying, do you know what I mean? Like in the sense of how it's rolling now, what would you say needs to still come in and be applied, or is everything in place that you feel needs to be in place? Is
No,
there?
it's not in place. It's still rolling in. So, for example, one of the things under the contract I am on, under the government part, is they want lived experience people in all areas of mental health. So if you've got a team of clinical people, they want someone that's lived the journey and has
Right,
come through the journey, or they've been alcohol dependent, they've lived the journey, or homelessness, whatever it is. Have those people as what's the word, you know, to work on the team, but have that experience,
right.
because the clinical side is too far removed from what real life is. And so that's and that's system change. That's bring in people that have lived that life, that can actually advise these clinical people.
Experiencing. Yes,
Yeah,
that's great.
that's quite a big thing.
It's huge.
I've got a personal thing that I'm doing in my job, but I want to see emergency services. So, you know, I've got a young lady who's experienced a massive amount of abuse, and there are flags on her file if she rings up for her home and her phone, but very rarely does it actually go through to the policemen that come out to her. So, for example, this girl, ridiculous amount of violence and sexual abuse, held captive, raped 10, 15 times a day, sending out 2 men, police officers, to her
Right, get you. Yeah.
because she gets reality dysplasia. So, for example, and I make her laugh because I think humor is a good way to break down the barriers. So
Absolutely.
they went and arrested her because she was in her pajamas in the middle of a roundabout. So they call me up and I say, well, where were you? Because the trauma she had for that time, she was kept captive for 3 months. This is a girl that's got 5 children taken off the streets. That trauma, her brain took her to somewhere nice while that was happening to her. When she gets stressed, her brain takes her back to somewhere nice. So this time I say to her, so where were you? Well, she said, I went down for a coffee and a smoke, and the next thing I knew, I was in Hawaii. I
Right.
thought, well, bloody hell, you didn't ring me. Why couldn't I come? But what had happened was they'd seen her on the roundabout, called the police, and 2 male officers went out. She fought them. They hogtied her. So you can see where this story's going. And it got worse. What I want for all emergency services is a system where flags come up onto their, because they all get it on their phones or whatever now. So, for
Okay.
example, you know, like a flag will come up for this lady, red because severe domestic violence and mental health, or an orange one because the person's a drug user, or, you know, a yellow one because they're alcohol dependent.
Right.
Because it will change the way any emergency services will work with them,
And
whether
for
it be
some
mental health.
and for someone like her, it would be send woman police, not men.
Yeah, or at least
A
one woman,
female. Yeah, yeah. At
if
least one.
possible. But
Yeah.
even if not possible, because
Don't
it's no good
hold
sending
tight.
through a whole load of text. Our police are stretched to the maximum. They do an amazing
Yes,
job. But just a flag coming up on that from the call center would make a massive difference, because that would just
absolutely.
be, you don't have to know the information, but there's a warning. And that's my little thing that I'm trying to get going here, you know, because I think it's really important. Could be for the fire brigade, could be for anyone, you know. Say the house is on fire and the lady in there's got severe mental health illness. For a fire brigade to know that that's there will make a difference to how they get her out.
Right. So each flag would be a color which which means something in its own
Yeah, and
sense.
keep it
Yeah, yeah,
simple,
yeah.
you know.
Cool. That's a great idea. Great idea.
So I floated that at the meeting the other day, and they were like, yes, because they've been saying, oh, information should be given from National Health Service, you know, the hospitals, to police. They haven't got time to read it, not
No,
at all. So,
no,
you
no.
know, I said green for mental health, orange for drugs, blue for alcohol, purple for domestic violence, and red for all of the abuse and abuse in the now. So that could be someone running from abuse, you know, just a few flags, simple to remember,
That's
and you don't
great.
have to know more, but it'll just come
Yeah,
up on any service. So they're like, that's a really good idea. We'll see.
that's a great idea and very simple. Very
Yeah,
simple.
it just changes the way you respond to somebody in any of those situations. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely.
And for the sake of the police or the fire or whoever service as well. Because if it's
Yeah.
someone that's heavily dependent on drugs who don't know how they're gonna react, at least you're aware. Or if
Yeah.
it's mental health, how vulnerable they are or whatever. So that's my
That's so
personal
great.
campaign at the moment.
That's brilliant. Beautiful. And so simple. And this is the thing. You know, is always so simple, isn't it? And doesn't have to be big. You know, like you say, they haven't got time to read the file before they head out the door to some sort of emergency. It's not like that at all. So that is a brilliant idea. And I'm sure they'll take that on board because it is so brilliant. And it's
Mm.
very simple.
It's just a system set up though again.
It
So
is, of course, but that too, it'll be a bit time consuming, but still it's valuable, very
well,
valuable.
what you do, as you do with everything when it's government, you prove how much money they'll save.
Yes, true. True.
And how much risk assessment is saved, because the safety for the person and the safety for the services. So
Wow. No, that's brilliant stuff, Pauline. And it's do you feel like you were, I mean, you were here in New Zealand. Can you see a resemblance, do you think? Like, do you
yeah,
think the UK is going through something that the world's going through, or other countries in particular are?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do think that it's happening. I'm not sure in other countries what they're going to be doing about it. I know that this is quite a new pilot thing, and there's a lot of eyes on it. Not my level, but higher up.
Yeah, yeah.
But saying that, our big thing is, if you've got a summit with all the calculations, you need to have some of us that have been on the street, that have been in the situation, to explain what is going on out there, not
Yeah.
just facts and figures.
Yeah.
I do think it's going on around the world. I do think the light's shining through. It may be
Mhm.
still down the tunnel a bit, but it's there, and there are
Yes.
changes happening. And I think they keep giving us all this bad news so that we don't see that light. But the light, it's like the train coming down the tunnel. It's coming. It just
Yeah.
might be delayed.
Yeah, yeah. And I do feel that too. I get that very clearly, that there's this, like I was saying about how I feel like people are coming out of the thaw now, they're thawing out, they're starting to see that actually we can start planning life again and getting back on the waka, whatever that might be, and the move forward. Um, but then next minute you see something else coming in that's just thrown in there to create some fear again, and to hang on a minute, no, you're not. But what I do see is people now are very much ignoring those types of things, like you say, laughing at it, and I'm seeing that more and more, and I'm feeling the movement of the people themselves, like we've always heard how people believe that there's going to be ones who are coming in to save us and rescue us and all of that sort of thing. And even now I still hear so many people talking about, these governments and people in play that need to be arrested and taken out. Well, that's not going to happen because, for one, those who run this world own that judicial, a system. So how is that going to work? So we've got to stop looking at sitting back and waiting to be rescued. And I think people are starting to get that now,
It's about
and actually.
us.
Totally, it is about us, and it's about us putting things into play, starting to bring in these new things, like you say, some of these things that are, like we're talking about, clinical, they've done it like this forever. Well, has that actually worked? Is that actually working now? It probably never has, and it still isn't.
I
So
think the
it's
knowledge has, I'd better correct myself. The knowledge
totally, I get it.
is
Yes.
amazing. I
Yeah.
think the way it's delivered needs to be changed.
Many things are like that.
Yeah.
They haven't worked and they're not working, and let's change it now. And I see lots of people coming through in different arenas, groups, wherever, that are actually starting to work like yourself from the inside out. And that's always where it's got to start, isn't it? It's always an inside thing. So before people are standing out on the road with placards and that's an outside trying to change the inner. It's not going to work like that. We have to have the inside change to the outer. So those
So that
ideas,
you've
like
just
you've just
reminded,
told us
sorry,
about,
go on. Go on.
yeah, those ideas like you've just said about having the flags, that's a great idea, and that's going to work from the inside out. It's a great thing. What did you
One of the
just
first
remember?
things I do with my clients, the first thing I notice is there is no self-love. None. When I
No.
meet them. And that's the first thing I teach them or get them doing. And it may be as simple as joining them to the gym so they can have a sauna or a spa, as simple as
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
that starts the healing. That self-love starts the healing for any addiction, any homelessness, any mental health. It starts the whole thing. I mean, obviously, if you've got an illness of mental health illness, you know, schizophrenia, anything, then you need support medication and that sort of thing. But it doesn't have to be all about that. It actually should start inside. And that is
Yes.
the first thing that happens. And a lot of people where I work now are doing that. It's about finding what's good for you, what makes you feel good, and then we can go on to do the rest of it.
That is the best, that is the answer to it. It really is. Because once we all love ourselves more, than we choose better things. We want better things for ourselves. And the choices that are made are towards that more than it is about the destruction and the I don't care about myself and who cares anyway, you know. Great work. That's really great work, Pauline. Very, very beautiful. And
I love it. Honestly, this is where I should be. This is
totally,
so where I should be doing this role, you know.
I totally agree. It's just so where your heart's always been, really. And this gives you access to it on a big level. It's great.
People go, why did you leave New Zealand? It's beautiful. And I say, it's the most beautiful place in the world. I said, but I needed to be here to do this. For there's several reasons, but I need to be here.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. And there's something else I want to say is, I know how destructive media is, but the stories that are in the UK from the lockdown in New Zealand are completely the opposite of what was real there. I mean, completely the opposite.
Really?
Yeah. And they still see the old Prime Minister as this amazing heroine, because the media stories have been, I know, it just blew my mind when I got back here, and still does, some of the things that are said. And it's like, no, you know, no.
Actually.
And the
Yeah,
march in
wow.
Wellington was, all the gangs in New Zealand. No, it wasn't, it's like,
Wow.
so I've always understood media, and what they do
Yeah.
and the control and all that, but not to the level that it is country to country.
Wow, that's out there. It is. I'm glad New Zealand itself, the people in New Zealand have woken up. They've been very aware and are now more so, definitely. And the movie that came out, the documentary that was put together, River of Freedom, that was huge in the way that it was the inside story.
Yeah,
And it was brilliant. Like, actually, I cried the whole way through it. Was like all this, and realized the trauma that people are still carrying, from that time. So yeah, that's part of what I've got going on at the moment. I'm just setting something up to help with that. But it's yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing. But people woke up, and that was allowed to, which was, I'm saying allowed because it was allowed to go into the actual cinemas. We didn't have to have private viewings. It was actually put into cinemas. People requested it, the people, and cinemas took it on, and they were sold out. They actually ran extra here, in my town, extra days because it was sold out continually. So it's people that I wouldn't have thought would have gone and seen it went and saw it. And I know for myself, my own children, my oldest daughter and her son went, and their eyes were opened, and they got me finally. They got me because she said I only watched the mainstream media. Didn't know
yeah.
that.
The other
So,
movie, of course, is Sound of Freedom, that here had to be petitioned to get it here. So it
right.
had to be the voice of the people, because they weren't going to bring it and they weren't going to put it in the cinemas here. So New Zealand's quite linked with America, but here it's not. And millions of people, millions signed this to bring it here, and it opened so many eyes. So some
Wow.
great things coming out in movie land, isn't it, to get the message through.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. That's really cool. That's actually really cool. I like that it's gone out there and lots of people saw it. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
I took friends who had absolutely no idea of any of that, none of it, and it was like, oh my God, this is what
Wow,
you've been
cool.
talking about.
Isn't it great when you finally, it's that thing of I'm finally being heard and understood. Yeah, it's
Back
big,
to
isn't
the
it? It's big.
listening, back to being heard.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
coming back to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, just the simplest thing, it's why I don't go to hairdressers. I do my own because they don't listen to me. I've never had them once ever listen to what I actually wanted. They just did what they wanted and didn't hear me. So yeah, I get it. That's on a global scale, isn't it? That, and now I feel more people are listening and more, government groups and yeah, are coming together more and are actually taking notice. I think because it's been shoved in their face now. Like there is no way. It's like this whole thing in Palestine. There's no way that anybody can dispute what's really going on because it's so blatant in your face. And now it's like this is what's coming out now is that actually, yes, it is so blatantly in their face, like the homelessness now, people that are in need, that can't feed their families. There's just so much that is now sort of being revealed. I suppose the light has shone on it all and they can't shove it away anywhere. There's no dark areas to cover it over again, and put it
And
away.
questions. People
Yes,
are finally asking questions.
they so
Oh,
are.
no, in the past, oh, take this pill. Now it's
Yeah.
why. What's
Yes.
that going to do?
Yes,
That's a
absolutely.
simple one, but lots of questions are starting to come out,
Yeah.
instead of people just sitting back and believing that they know better than I do. Of course, that's never been the case, but that's
Yeah.
how it was.
Mm.
My mum's era would never question a doctor or the vicar.
No. And you got dressed up to go,
Yeah.
like they were put on a pedestal, weren't they? You put your good gear on to go to see the doctor. Now it's like go down in your jammies, who cares? They're not on a pedestal anymore. It's
And they do an amazing job. They do.
they
But
do,
we,
totally.
we now ask the questions, which
Exactly.
keeps everybody accountable. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's great, eh? I'm loving what I'm seeing, even though I know these next few years are going to be pretty out there in respect to what is going to happen out there because they are going to really push this in our face again and try and get us to back down and all of that. It's going to get a bit more hairy McCleary, as I put it. But I think if we just carry on the way we are and just ignore it, don't comply, we're going to break through it even now more and more so, I think. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. But again, it's there to wake more people and just to bring more strength and their no, not doing it.
yeah.
And this war that's happening now, I mean, young ones are now choosing to go to jail. They're not going. They're saying, no, we're not going. We're not fighting your war. Put us in jail. And they're going into jail. It's so cool. It's like, yeah, great, do that. More of us say no to all of this stuff, the more it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, and I love seeing it unfolding. I love seeing what's rising out of that. The chaos and the bullpucky.
It is tough, but I do think the light's coming in stronger and stronger day by
Mm,
day.
absolutely, it
And I
is.
think we've got to hold on to the good stuff.
We do. Absolutely, we do. Yeah, I mean, I get excited. You know me. I've always been excited about this time and where we are in it and how we can get through it, and all the rest of it. And people sort of look at me and go, "What excited about this?" It's absolute caca, but it's got lots of good in it. If we can just rise through it, which is what's happening, then man,
Well,
what we
change is good, isn't it?
It is. Change is wonderful.
But, you know, I used this analogy with one of my clients the other day, and I said, when you learned to ride a bike, did you get on your bike and just ride it?
Mm.
No. Did you have to keep practicing? Yes. That's the same as giving up alcohol, giving up drugs, or changing the world. We're not going to get it right on the first go. You have to
Oh,
keep trying until we get there.
that's right. We do. And you know yourself, I know myself when I was trying to wean, I always called it weaning myself off, out of my marriage. I weaned myself out, went a couple of times and went back and then went and went and there was no going back, so you sort of do that thing and each time you're learning more about where you're at and
Yeah.
what your strengths are, what you really do want. Yeah, and eventually you find the courage and it's just there, it changes. You break through that wall, isn't it? But this has been really great, Pauline. Is there anything that you'd like to leave, you know, with? Anything
Haven't
you
I
feel
said enough?
you have said enough, and if that's it, that's great. That's been
I just
absolutely
think reiterate the whole listening thing. We really need to listen to each other, or someone in trauma, or someone that's
yeah.
homelessness. Listen, listen, listen. And, you know, obviously no judgment, but just listen, because there's so much in there that we are missing and so much we can learn from. You know, I learn
Mm,
every day from my clients, every day.
yeah.
And I think we've lost that art of listening.
Yeah, I believe so. We're quite often looking to how we can respond, reply, rather than actually listening to what's being said. Yeah, I agree. And we've been very uncomfortable with the silence.
Mm.
Nobody likes it when there's no conversation. We sit in silence and somebody has to come in with something, because it's uncomfortable. We're getting more comfortable, I think, with just being in silence, just letting it be what it is.
Well, that's
And
where phones came in, wasn't it? It covered up the silence, you know, and it's not
did.
good.
No. Wow. So things are shifting for sure, and it's a great thing. And like I say, you definitely, like, you're in the right space. I know you're in the right space. You're fantastic in the sense of your compassion and your heart. And I know that all of your clients, everyone that comes into contact with you, will be getting some absolute empowerment from what you offer them and your assistance to them. So I think it's beautiful that the UK's got you.
Oh, thank you.
and and you're
There's
obviously,
lots of me here, you know, lots of
yeah,
different
well,
me's.
I know it takes teams. I get that, but I also know your strength and your heart. It's beautiful. So
Thank you,
yeah.
Mandy. Back at you.
Mm, thank you. Well, all the very best and much, much love, Pauline. And yeah, keep rocking it.
Thank you, Mandy. Love to all.